Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to talk about another highly anticipated project, Thomson Reserve, a project many are waiting for.
That's right, so many clients are asking us about this, even from beginning of the year. Feel free to contact us if you need further discussion on this project or any others.
Today, we will talk about what is the hype about Thomson Reserve and why it's a highly sought after project. There are a few considerations buyers should take note of before buying in terms of location, the west sun, and being in Bright Hill.
Yeah, the floor plans are not out yet, so do look out for the next video where we will analyze the different layouts. We will also talk in depth about the project expected pricing and at what price do you walk away. So Belle, what is really the hype about Thomson Reserve? Why is it so popular?
Well, the news about the en bloc itself is already a hype. After 4 failed attempts over 17 years, the former Thomson View condominium successfully sold in the 5th try for $810 million, led by UOL, Singland, and Capital Land. So this translates to a land price of 1178 PSF PPR and the land size of 504,000 square feet. Can yield about 1,268 units.
Okay, publicity aside, so the real draw is the location of the project, right?
Yes, correct. The location itself and the amenities around it is a big draw for buyers. So there will be an integrated pedestrian gateway at the main entrance, providing a direct access to Upper Thomson MRT station in just 2 minutes. And for school-going kids, the parents will be happy to know that Aitong School will be within 1 kilometer, and this is going to be very popular. There are also quite a number of other reputable schools within 2 kilometers, such as Catholic High, CHIJ St. Nicholas Girls, and Marymount Convent.
With Thomson Plaza just opposite, right, your daily necessities will be settled. There is NTUC Finals, a food court, and a number of F&B outlets such as cafes, restaurants. And that you can get a whole stretch of those shop houses along Upper Thomson, where you can find more food, cafe, fitness studios. After eating all the sinful food, right, you will have 5 nature parks to choose from to burn off your calories.
Whoa, really everything is here. No wonder everybody is waiting for this launch. So location aside, another reason Thomson Reserve is getting so much attention. D20 doesn't see a lot of launches very often, and the last one we saw was Ang Mo in 2022. That's like 4 years ago. Before Ang Mo was Jadescape in 2018. So that's like 8 years ago. And there are less than 30 developments. If I exclude the smaller projects, there are less than 150 units. And many of them are already more than 15 years old.
Yeah, so the low supply actually makes project in D20 while sought after cause the new projects are scarce. So when Amor was launched, it sold about 98% on day 1. And this is a kind of response with the pent-up demand.
Yes, low supply, high demand. If we look at the profitability in D20, all are doing well. So look at Ang Mo. With just 3 years, because most of the buyers actually bought on day 1, all bed types are making profits, averaging from 228k for 2 bedroom to 630k for 4 bedrooms, and highest profits reached was 720k for a 4 bedroom. So there has been no unprofitable transactions yet. Next, we look at Jadescape. Past 5 years transactions, there was also no lost transaction yet. All bed types profited from 135k for 1 bed to almost 1.9 million for 5 bed. So average holding period here is 5 years. Same for Thomson Impressions, launched in 2019. Past 5 years transactions, no unprofitable transaction, and all bed types made profits, although for 1 bedroom is quite low, less than 100k. And the list goes on. Last example, Panorama, also no unprofitable transactions.
Wow, so look like D20 is a good place to invest in, right?
I think more importantly, it is a good place to stay in. When a location is desirable to stay in, there will always be demand, and given the low supply, prices will appreciate in the long term.
So is good location a sure win?
I think for a lot of buyers, location is really the first thing they look at. Like Thomson Reserve, you are near the MRT, shopping, and schools and nature. So the location already sounds very solid, right? And actually, I hear a lot of people using Jadescape as a comparison when they talk about Thomson area, like, oh, Jadescape did so well, so if Thomson Reserve is in the same area, is it going to have the same effect? But is it really that straightforward?
Yeah, so I think that's a very common way of looking at it, and I can understand why. Jadescape has done well, so naturally people will use it as a reference point for Thomson Reserve. But I think we have to be a bit more careful when making that comparison. Just because the two projects are in the same border area doesn't mean they will perform the same way. So there are differences in entry price, layout, unit size, project characteristics, and even what buyers are actually looking for. So instead of just saying, right, Jadescape actually made a lot of money, therefore Thomson Reserve should make money, I think we should actually look deeper and understand what was it about Jadescape that made buyers willing to pay more in the first place. And more importantly, do those same factors apply to Thomson Reserve today? That's why I want to show you the comparison between Skyview and Sky Habitat, because these two projects are literally just right next to each other.
Wait, they're actually right next to each other, then wouldn't we expect their performance to be the same?
Yeah, that's what I thought also, because if let's say they are basically in the same location here, right, you can see Skyview is over here, whereas Sky Habitat is just right next to it. So if let's say they are basically in the same location, right, you wouldn't expect a big difference. But once we look at the actual numbers, right, you will see it's quite different. And that's why I always say, just because two projects are in the same location, right, doesn't mean they will necessarily perform the same way.
So Sky Habitat is that designer looking project, isn't it? So it should be quite popular, no?
Yeah, so if you have driven past Sky Habitat, right, you will probably notice its design because it is quite distinctive, and it is quite iconic as well because it was designed by a very well-known architect. So from the outside, right, you might think this is okay and this one should do quite well. But when we look at the two-bedroom units, right, I was actually quite surprised. Because if we look at the units bought and sold between 2012 to 2018, right, the smaller two-bedders, which are about 872 and 893 square feet, right, only made around 15,000 to 21,000 of profit. So despite the nice design and prime Bishan location, right, the actual profit was actually quite modest.
Huh? Only 15 to 21k?
Yeah.
How about Skyview?
And this is where it gets interesting, right? Skyview two-bedders are generally smaller. You can see the size, right, is actually from 678 square feet and 797 square feet. But when we look at the transaction within the similar period, right, where it is transacted between 2013 to 2018, you can see the two-bedders were making somewhere around 100k as much as to 370k of profit. So if you are the buyer looking for a two-bedder in this area, right, I think you really have to ask yourself, why didn't everyone just buy Sky Habitat instead? It is bigger, it is more iconic, right? And it is literally just next door. So clearly there's more to the story than just the location itself.
So was Skyview actually easier to sell also?
Yeah, that's where it gets more interesting. Even Skyview has more two-bedders than Sky Habitat, right? But you can see the number of resale transactions for two-bedders was actually 4 times more than the Sky Habitat transactions. And when we look at the profitable transactions of Sky Habitat, right, you can see that there's approximately 25% of the two-bedders in Sky Habitat that make a profit. And compared to 41% of the transactions in Skyview were profitable. There were actually no unprofitable transactions in Skyview, whereas for Sky Habitat there are 8 unprofitable transactions.
So if this is the case, usually it has something to do with the layout, doesn't it?
Yeah, so let's take a look. And you are right, if we take a look at the layout of the Sky Habitat, right, you can see that there's a very big balcony, and you can clearly see that the balcony is actually having a odd shape. So, and honestly, right, if you are someone who loves having the huge terraces, right, then this might be quite nice for you. But if we are talking about practicality in terms of the future resale, right, we also need to think about the average buyer may prefer. For example, the common bathroom here, right, is actually a powder room, which also means that you can only shower in the master bathroom itself. And the kitchen is also more open concept. Of course, nothing wrong with open concept, but when buyers compare it with other two-bedders unit, right, generally they may prefer having a bigger kitchen and with the option to close it out. And now if you look at the sky view layout, right, although the size is actually smaller, the layout is actually more practical. You will have a proper common bathroom over here, and also you have a proper living and dining area. And besides this, right, you actually get a proper kitchen where you can actually enclose it. And on top of this, right, there's no weird shape of the balconies area as well. And this is why I always tell my buyers, right, don't just look at which project is nicer from the facade. You also have to think about when you eventually sell, right, who is going to buy your units.
Okay, then let's talk about something else that buyers always seem to worry about: west sun. So if you give me two units, identical ones, say one unit A doesn't get the west sun but have average view, but unit B gets the west sun but with fantastic view. Honestly, it's going to be very difficult to choose. How will you choose, Eunice?
Okay, before that, right, maybe I can just share that this is actually the west facing of the Thomson Reserve. You can see you have a pretty clear landed unblocked view, right? Yeah, so in fact the reservoir and the landed facing, right, are actually with the west sun in the Thomson Reserve. But based on my experience, right, a lot of buyers when they hear west sun, right, they will immediately say no because they are worried about the afternoon heat. And honestly, I can actually understand that. But I think we also need to look at it at a bigger picture. A west-facing unit can be warmer in the afternoon, but maybe you get a nice sunset view, more natural light, or maybe the unit is priced cheaper because the west sun. Meanwhile, the unit without the west sun might cost you even more, but maybe the view isn't as good, or you get traffic noise or facing another building. So honestly, no property is really perfect lah. Every unit will have something you like and something you don't like. The key is just to figure out which compromises you are okay with and whether you are paying the right price for them. And just to know what you guys are thinking, feel free to let us know in the comments which one you will choose and why.
But wait, if a unit faces west, doesn't it mean that you will be getting the sun every single day?
Yeah, so actually not exactly. So the sun doesn't set in exactly the same place throughout the year. Around March and September, right, the sun is closer to the west. So that's when the west facing units generally get stronger afternoon sun. Whereas from April to August, right, the sun shifts more towards the northwest. So those units may get more of it. From October to February, right, it shifts more towards the southwest. So basically, a west-facing unit doesn't mean you will get the exact same amount of afternoon sun throughout the year. You really need to look at the actual direction, the stack, and what's around the unit before deciding whether the west sun is a big issue.
I guess it's quite personal. While we think the west sun is a no, but many people don't mind if they get a good view. Okay, now let's talk about another topic that buyers may be concerned with. That is, Thomson Reserves actually have views towards Bright Hill, you know, where the crematorium is.
Yes. Yeah, so I think it is a fair question and definitely something buyers should know before they buy. Thomson Reserve is actually near Kongminsan Monastery, where the Bright Hill Columbarium is located, and there are also some funeral palaces nearby.
So depending on which stack and which floor you're on, you might actually be able to see these facilities, right?
Yes. Yeah, so this is where Thomson Reserve is located at. And if you can see from this map itself, right, the Kongminsan Monastery, right, and the Bright Hill Columbarium and Crematorium is actually located just right opposite the Midview City, which is over here. Yeah, and of course, depending on the stacks and the direction and floor level that you choose, right, some of the units might actually have a line of sight towards this direction here. And that's why when choosing a unit, right, it is really important to look at the actual view instead of just looking at the project as a whole. Yeah, actually from this map itself, right, you can see that it is pretty close to the Bright Hill Crematorium and Columbarium area.
So then does it mean that those units automatically are less ideal units to buy?
Actually not at all lah. Honestly, I think it is really depending on the individual buyers. Some buyers won't really care about it at all, while some may actually have a personal, cultural, religious and feng shui belief. And that's completely understandable. So at the end of the day, right, you are the one who is living there And if you are perfectly fine with it and you love everything else about this project, right? The location, greenery, MRT, and a good school, so be it. And it may not be an issue for you. But there's one thing you also have to remember. You're probably not going to own this property forever. So one day you might need to sell it and your future buyer may not feel the same as you do. And some people won't care but might immediately say no. And that doesn't mean that the unit can't make money, but it could mean that your pool of buyers is a little smaller. And you might need more time to find the right person. So for me, right, the bigger question isn't really, is this unit a good unit or bad unit? But actually to me is, am I paying the right price for it? And if you are paying exactly the same price as another similar unit, right, that doesn't have this issue, then maybe you are taking on an extra compromise without getting anything in return. But if the price is already discounted to reflect it, right, then maybe you are actually getting a good value. And that's really how I look at property. And there will always be compromises. One unit has west sun, another faces the road, or you just need to understand what you are giving up and what you are getting in return and whether the price makes sense for you.
Agree. Everyone has different beliefs and opinions towards this subject. There are people staying even closer to Guangmingshan, like gardens at Bishan Point, and so I guess it's something you as a buyer has to consider.
Yeah, so look out for our part 2 of our video on Thomson Reserve. For now, we are signing off. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.